Evening of April 17th. This is a regular meeting of the Arlington City Council. My name is Rich Nagel. I'm the mayor and I'll be presiding at the meeting. Would you join me please in a salute to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and again, welcome everyone. We'll have a roll call. Councilmember Cowell.
Here.
Councilmember Hattlestead.
Here.
Councilmember Yashewski.
Here.
Councilmember Batcher.
Here.
All council members here except Councilmember Highland, and our thoughts are with him. He is recovering from surgery, so he will be back as soon as the doctor allows him to be back. Also with us this evening on my left, City Administrator Donabauer, on my right, City Attorney Arneson. Joining us in the audience this evening, Jason Femright, representing Bolton and Menk, our engineering firm. We have a representative from Pilot Travel Centers. We also have two gentlemen, Lee Ortliff and Greg Stang from People Service. Pastor Rod Stemme is here representing the United Methodist Church. We have Tony Padilla, our interim police chief, and lastly, but not leastly, Kurt Menk, representing the Arlington Enterprise. Okay, we'll go on to item number 3, approve the agenda. Any agenda additions? I do have one addition, and that would be under new business. We will discuss the alleyway improvement project at the Methodist Church, or I should say behind the Methodist Church, between 3rd and 4th Avenue. Are there any other additions or changes in the agenda? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second that.
Motion by Councilmember Yashewski, second by Councilmember Hattlestead to approve the agenda with the one addition under new business. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed no. Motion carried. Move on to the consent agenda. Item 4A under the consent agenda is approval of the April 3rd regular meeting minutes. Item B, approval of the April 3rd special workshop meeting minutes. Item C, approval of the March 28th special meeting minutes. Item D, approval of the bills. Item E, replace variable speed drive at water well number 4 located in the EMS building at a cost of $6,150, and that is through Ideal Service. And item F, authorize hiring of Kenneth Pershaw for seasonal mower.
And I apologize. We will have to remove item C, approval of the March 20th special, is that right? April 3rd regular meeting minutes. They are not in your packet.
Okay, so we're moving item A under the agenda, consent agenda.
Out of the consent agenda?
Right,
Correct.
the April 3rd regular meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Motion by Councilmember Batcher, second by Councilmember Yashewski to approve the consent agenda with item A struck. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed no. Motion carried. There are no public hearings this evening, so we'll go right to item 5, addressing the council. Is there anyone at this time that wishes to address the council? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 6, announcements.
Tomorrow we are hosting the Senior Expo right here at the Arlington Community Center from 9 to 2:15. Coffee with the Mayor will take place at 1:30 on Thursday at the Cenex gas station, so come and join Mayor Nagel for a cup of coffee and some conversation. We also have the Go Local, Live and Work in Sibley County Second Annual Business Expo, April 20th, 4 to 8 p.m., again right here at the Arlington Community Center. That very same night, the local Board of Appeal and Equalization will be taking place at the Sibley County Assessor's Office in Gaylord. The Arlington Library hosts meteorologist Belinda Jensen. That location was originally at our library, but due to the popularity of the speaker and event, it will be changed to to the community center right here on Friday, April 21st at noon. We'd also encourage our residents and council to sign up for How to Become a Tree Steward class. It will be hosted here at the community center Saturday, May 13th, 10 to 4:30 p.m. We'll have professors or instructors from the University of Minnesota down for that class. We have the Arlington Chambers Spring into Arlington event, April 27th from 5 to 8 p.m. all along Main Street, the EMS building, as well as the former TSE building along Highway 5. And then last but not least, our City of Arlington Cleanup Day, May 24th, 9 to 4 p.m. in partnership with Tri-County Waste, and that will be held at the Sibley County Fairgrounds.
Okay, any questions in regard to the announcements? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 7, communications.
In your packet, you do have a copy of the March water and wastewater report. I know Lee Ortloff and Greg Stang from People Services may touch on that later if there's any questions. Chief Padilla submitted the March police reports. He too can touch on that later on in our agenda today. We have the March building permit report, which includes one new residential or home building permit. We have the March financial reports. League of Minnesota Cities is holding its annual conference, Signs of a Vibrant City, from June 14th through the 16th in Rochester. So any city council members, please let me know if you'd like our staff to register for that event. And then the second Sibley County Community Development newsletter representing the month of April is in your packet as well, which just goes on to explain different economic development events and announcements throughout Sibley County.
Okay, any questions on the communications? If not, we will move on to the reports of officers, boards, and committees. Item number 8, annual report, people service, Mr. Stang and Mr. Ortloff. Please come up to the microphone. And welcome again.
Good evening. Thank you again for having us. It's a great idea to have these annual reports. I wish more cities would do it. Your neighbor to the north does it also. It just gives me a chance. I've never met Thomas or Adam yet. You know, I'm Greg Stang. I'm region manager at People Service. I'd be technically Lee's boss. Lee is the lead here, the Class A operator. I'm the one if Liza has more technical questions, that kind of stuff, how we do things, assist with her, take care of the staffing issues here, that kind of stuff. So if you get some issues with staff, that kind of thing goes through me. And I know Lee put a lot of time into getting the 2016 year in review and goals for 2017, so I'll kind of let him take over from there, what he's got.
So I decided to put a report together, kind of showing what we all did last year, and you know, guy works and once and you look at, kind of got a lot of major stuff done last year. Some of the major stuff was the water tower repaint. Completed it for a cost around $82,000, and it's either this year, next year. It's on a program to be cleaned every 3 years. When that comes up, but when it's done, we'll have it all cleaned, and then we'll have an inspection made of it, what the condition of the inside is like, and then we'll go from there where we can budget whatever it would cost if we have to do some kind of paint work inside or touch up or whatever the condition is on site. So when we get to that point, we'll check out what it is, and then by that time that tower should be done inside and out from top to bottom. Should be good for at least another 20 years. Last year we put a new roof on the effluent building. If you remember, it had a flat roof and it ended up being an issue with asbestos on it. And we decided looked into what it would cost to just put a regular hip roof on it and a pitched roof on it, and it ended up being $10,000 cheaper to do that route. And the building looks wonderful. It really changed the aesthetics of it out there and how it looks. It just looked like a beat up old brick building. Now it's got a pleasant look to it when you go in there. Nice roof on it. And then we replaced the makeup air unit at the Headworks building last year. Every year it seemed like it had issues, and then it was put in new in 2009, and the city spent over $14,000 repairing that thing, and it had some major issues to it. Computer control board was out of it at that time, and there were some sensors that were out of it, and there was no guarantee that it would run, so the decision was made to change that out. And it's been working great. The old one was never really a fit for what the application was. It has a damper on it that closes it, and the damper was on the front side of it instead of the back side between the building and the unit. It was originally meant to work in like some kind of as an exhaust takeout for like a restaurant would suck exhaust out for it, so the damper was on the wrong side. And with that happened, a lot of the issues came from is the heater would go down and then air would get in it from the inside of the building, because the whole process of that is to change the air out, keep the air fresh in that building. You get gases in there, and basically it ate it up from the inside, and that's what has resulted in it being replaced. And I'm happy to say we've had no issues with the new one here, so hopefully it'll last for a long time. Last year we made upgrades to the water plant communications. We got rid of all the phone lines and the modems up there. And then we also tied in the alarm system to the central SCADA at the wastewater plant. And with that being done, and that on the lift stations, we got rid of a total of 12 phone lines. I think it had a cost on here of $400 a month that we don't pay, but I think it was more than that. So that's gone. So eventually there'll be a payback on that the money invested in that will pay for itself. So it's working out. We really don't have, we used to get called out for a lot of nuisance alarms for communication fails because a modem locked up or something like that, and we don't have any alarms no more. We're not chasing our tails, running around, so it gives us, me and the other guy, Brian and Lewis, a lot more time to get other things done that should be done, so that's working out well. The year before, in 2015, there were some improvements done to the Brook Street and School Lift Station. They were put on to control that the level transducer, digital level transducer that looks at it and controls the pumps. And last year when we had some high rains, we had an issue at the school where they did the retrofit. They took out the old control floats and now there's a high float in it, and that would act as an alarm. And the issue was we found, and we didn't even know this, that if a pump would fail or that panel would fail, there's no way for the pumps to come on. There was no redundancy in there. So we did some wiring in there and put another float in there, so it's got a high float and a low float. And if that panel was to fail, it hits the high float, it's going to automatically kick on both pumps. And then it's going to hit the low float when it pumps it down and shut them off. So I don't know, somehow it got overlooked in the bid or whatever, and I looked back through the bid, and that's how it was bid. It was to take out these controls and put this in here, and that's what was paid for in that. And when they did that, they took out the old system of doing it, and that was it. And I'm glad that we found it. We had a rainstorm that came up, and a high level alarm went off, and it kicked it out, but it kicked out the transformer for that control panel, but the power wasn't out, so it never kicked the generator in. So it was sitting there dead. Even though it's still alarmed out for a high level alarm, we could have easily had sewer backups because of it. So I mean, it was almost it's a blessing that it was found, because now we should have no issues. And that was done on the Brook Street and the school lift station, and they both work fine now. So and then it's set up on both of them that the alarm light will go on too, besides dial. And the only way that will reset itself is if somebody actually it'll reset itself to go back to the normal mode, but that light will not go off unless somebody physically resets it. So somebody has to be there. So we kind of did it that way, just to make sure, double check that everything's working fine as it should. So, and one of the biggest things we did last month was I was at a meeting with Greg here over in Hutchinson at the MWO. They had a deal over in Hutchinson. We went to it, and MinTap was there. That's the Minnesota Technical Assistance Program, and part of their discussion was in the state of Minnesota, there's a lot of energy use that is used in wastewater plants, tremendous amount, and they are funded through they are from the U of M, funded through the state of Minnesota to help communities find ways to conserve energy. And they take like 8 people a year, and they only had 2 or 3, and so if you want to sign up, they said sign up. So I talked to them or whatever, and they came out, and we did some work on it. There was some talk before this about, you know, with the plant expansion that went on at the wastewater plant, why is it costing so much? Why is it, you know, we should see savings and stuff from this, and we're not. And that's what we looked at. We came out and did all kinds, looking at flows, looking at DO, how the plant's running and all that. And one of the things that was really obvious when they came out is the plant was running at 100% capacity, as if it was at, it's not at that, but that's how it was running. When these plants are built, they're made to work 30 years from now yet. And there was so many basins and stuff that were under product of the DO and mixing and everything. It was just overkill and everything. So basically what we did was we reduced the footprint of the plant in half. We went from the main blowers to a smaller blower that's in the back room, and we turned it down to half speed. And so far, we noticed right away that we had a huge reduction in energy savings, just right away on that. We did not do it until November of last year. It showed up on December's bill, and now you can go January, March of the first quarter. There's about 28% savings in electrical costs at the wastewater plant, which results in about $5,000 for the 3 months, and which would be about $20,000 a year in savings just in electrical out there. I think that's pretty huge. The plant's working just as fine, and we'll just go from there with it. So that's kind of the stuff that major highlights that we did last year and stuff. So then I put together some of my goals, or the goals that I'd like to do next year, and one is replacing the jetting machine. I'm gonna get 3 quotes. I would talk to some suppliers, see if we can demo some of them. You know, we can get some demo them for a week or whatever, and use them. We can get a lot of jetting done with their stuff. You know what I
Yes, you
mean?
can.
and you know, there's machines you might not like, you know, and find out what worked and what liked, and get a cost and a price on it, and see what works out best, and then bring it back and go from there. So, sludge wagon, we're gonna get new tires on that. Those original tires on there, they're pretty bald, cracked and checked. Continue to do energy reductions at the wastewater plant. We turned this down, and it's been working great. I want to be able to wait till we get a really hot night in the summertime, and we get a really hot day and it stays hot and humid at night, like in the 70s, and dew points way up there. I want to work on turning this down and see how far I can turn it down to, because the rest of the time don't matter. You don't want to run this thing and find out that it's going to get hot and burn the motor out, and all of a sudden you just lost $8,000 because you were goofing around with something. So we can get this kind of turned down more and reduce our energy consumption too out there. It might be 5%, 10%. I wouldn't think more than that, but that's still significant. So, and as time goes on and the community grows and you get some kind of business in here that's gonna put a lot of load on the wastewater plant or something like that, you have the capacity out there. So with that also, you will have somebody paying into that too, so we can bring stuff back online as time goes on. So another project I'm working on is a biological phosphorus removal. I'm trying to continue to manipulate the plant to do that process. Last year we were $4,000 over on the chemical budget on it, and we were just about that much under on the maintenance, so it was kind of a wash last year. But we do it in other towns. We're trying different processes. Kind of hit on it, and a couple times we had it down, and then it started jumping back up again. A lot of it happens is that there's some I&I issues with getting a lot of flow in the plant, and when that happens, that kind of takes that process away. But originally, since then until now, we have a major reduction in the chemicals that we've been using. So we're moving it in the right direction. So, and then we're gonna work on a water supply plan that used to be called the DNR Water Emergency Response Plan. I'm about a third of the way through it. I touched on it on my March report. The first part is kind of looking back at 10 years, what your history of water use was, for what, and how it was used, and then you project out for the next 10 years. And then the next part of it is conservation efforts and stuff. How are you going to conserve water and stuff like that? And one of the things that might come out of that is the city might have to adopt an ordinance for a watering ban. And we've done it in other cities and never implemented it. what happens, the way the state set this up, if you don't do that and you wanna have some project in town and you wanna like apply for PFA funding or something like that, they could deny you part of that or force you to do that, or you won't get the funding. So it's kind of, I mean, it ain't a big deal, but that's one of the things that might come out of it. And another part of the plan is what are you gonna do in an emergency? If you have a catastrophe and the water tower gets knocked over and, you know, or something like that, how are you gonna supply water to your community? And it's interesting, it makes you think about stuff and what your resources are, where you can get water, how you can get water and stuff, so we'll be working on getting that done. Wellhead protection plan, there was one that was created and done for the city 10 years ago. We have to go through that, look at what needed to be done on it, and then work on getting that caught up. And then we are eligible to file for a 10-year extension on it. With the wells being so deep in the aquifer here, there's really no vulnerability to that aquifer being contaminated. So instead of redoing everything, they just want to do a 10-year extension on it. But we got some stuff to do. We got to check out for any new wells, septics, underground storage tanks, and kind of like a 2-mile radius of town and some stuff like that. So. And then you're gonna start hearing a lot more about this, especially as we get some of this other stuff out of the way that we've been working on, is inflow and infiltration, what they call I&I. And you guys asked a question about it, but last year there was 46% of the water that came out to the wastewater plant was rainwater, groundwater. I've been working with the fairgrounds with it. There is some issues out there, but there's also some issues in the town here. Just over Saturday, we had 1.25 inches of rain, and the flows are generally 300,000 gallons a day at the plant, and just overnight they jumped up to a little over 1 million gallons. And there's something that's hooked in. There's some storm drain catch basin or something is hooked in somewhere. I know they did smoke testing years ago, and there was smoke that was coming out in the one area and stuff, so obviously there is something going on, but it's not something that's gonna be overnight that's gonna happen. It's a long-term thing, you know, and a lot of it's about education with where is it coming from, and some, you know, you get a lot of people with sump pumps hooked in, foundation tiles hooked in off the houses that come into it, but you know, basically, if you got a big surge, you got some kind of tile line or some roof or something draining in it, and the long-term stuff that take gradually, those are usually sump pumps or something in it. And I put a list together of the past 6 years, how much it was, and you can see the fluctuation in there. In 2016, it was 46%. In 2015, it was 7%. So that must have been a dry year, so that tells you it goes away. Once the sump pumps quit pumping and it ain't flowing in, it's gone. And I should mention with this, I also took the water that is pumped over in the wells over in Green Isle and here in Arlington and added them totals together of what that is to get this number. It's not just Arlington, because with the AGI, everything's coming over, it's both combined. And then there was some major issues back in 2014 when that heavy rainstorm was over in Green Isle, and that one major issue has been resolved. It hasn't been an issue since, but there still is some over there. But, and then you can see back in 2014, that's when we had that issue with 57% of the water, but you got 14 inches of rain, and the whole Island Creek was under, and the manhole cover got blown off, and it's draining into there. I guess that's not much you can do about that. So when you get below that, that's probably typical. In 2013 was 39%, 2012 was 33, you know, a little more in 2011 was probably a wetter year. So you can see that it does fluctuate with the weather, with the rain. And as of the end of 2015, you can see in our reports, when we go back, it covers how about in the past year it was. In November of 2015 is when all the rain started, And you can see that rise ever since, and then last year was one of the wettest years on record. It just continued to rise and stay up. So it's just something to work at, and, you know, the road projects that you are doing in town will definitely help that. I think one of the major issues is on by East Clinton, where that flooded last year. I know Tony was out there looking at stuff last year, and he found a manhole, or lifted a manhole, and there were two pipes down there, and one went this way, and one went the other way and off, and I'm pretty sure that's where our issue is, but if you take that away, you're really gonna flood the residents out down there. That was probably put in because of that as a bypass years ago, you know? So, but the efforts that you do are really helping. It'd be amazing how much worse it would have been without, like, all this over here being done, you know, in 2015.
Yeah,
So-
but 46% from 2016, I think, would have been a lot higher if you had done them improvements previously. You'd probably washed it out, and that's why Lee hit on it. It's very tough when you get, you know, a rush of what you have 700,000 gallons extra a day to make the BioP process work, or the biological removal of the phosphorus, because you're just pushing the bugs right through. It's you can get near the detention time, that kind of stuff. You know, from kind of the outside looking, just looking at these numbers for the first time, they're pretty high for I&I. You know, these guys, there's an issue. I think you guys are on the right path. Let's work on, you know, obviously you can't attack it all at one time. Just keep going at it though, because it's making a difference, and every little bit's gonna help.
It's just a symptom of 60, 70, 80-year-old infrastructure.
Exactly. And I think you guys have this in your packets, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Is there a way to get something like this to the residents too, just to educate them?
I think that'd be a great
And
idea.
even some of these numbers that, you know, pretty much half the flow with the plant is groundwater that does not need to be treated. You know, it not only affects, you know, the capacity, but everybody has to pay for it. That's the
right.
problem, you know.
That's right.
We're paying for water to be treated that does not need to be treated. You know, it's gotta be pumped, and it's wear and tear on everything.
Yep.
So educating the public is it's a huge part of it. You know,
Good idea.
Some pumps are a big problem.
From so much to 3 million.
Okay. Anything else, gentlemen?
That's about all I have.
Any questions for the two from People Service?
I just wanna thank them for their hard work.
Yeah. It is.
I-
Looking out for our well-being.
I was really surprised. I did not think that changing them blowers over at the plant made that huge of a difference.
Save that kind of money.
Yeah, that's just unbelievable, because you're still running it's a 30 horse motor, but it's driving a smaller blower. They're still 30 horse motors, but it's turned down. You wouldn't think they're identical, that it would just make that huge amount of money by running it at a lower speed, you know. They were probably running, they run from 0 to 60 hertz, and they were running at about 50 hertz before, and now we turned it down to 30. We're at half speed with it, so it was just unbelievable.
This Mintap did after Lee had good results with them, I used them in another city in my region, and they are gonna be probably a little higher than that's gonna be their savings every year.
Really? Wow.
Just by turning down the blowers in a digester, and that's the biggest thing, that they're really big blowers, and it's didn't quite have the capabilities, but we now have them capabilities, did a little changing, and the savings are amazing just by turning them down, not even off. So,
Sounds like a great program to come upon, huh?
absolutely.
Absolutely.
For
And
sure.
the price was right.
And
And the
yeah,
price was
free.
right. Any questions for the gentleman from the council? All right, thank you very much.
bet.
Appreciate
Thank
the
you for
report.
your time.
Mhm. All right, we'll move on to ordinances. First reading of ordinance 313. Continuing.
Today we have the first reading of ordinance number 313, an ordinance enacting a code of ordinances for the city of Arlington, Minnesota, amending, restating, revising, updating, codifying, and compiling certain ordinances of the city dealing with subjects embraced in the code of ordinances, and providing penalties for the violation of the Code of Ordinances. And tonight, City Attorney Arneson forwarded chapters 9 with regard to the fire department and chapter 10 with the police department for the council's review.
And this stage was somewhat easy. Fire department and police department matters are largely regulated by,
Sorry.
fire department and police department matters are largely regulated by the state as far as qualifications, policies, and so on. And internally, the fire department and police department have their own policies and procedures, which are quite detailed. And so there really hasn't been a need for many city ordinances to overlay those things. In particular, the fire department, chapter 9, addresses charging for calls. That is something that the city set the policy rather than the fire department having internal procedures. And also, as a minor matter, we also had an ordinance on the books establishing Main Street residential strip as a special fire zone. Gives the city some added controls over the type of building materials that would go in there, basically to cut down on fire hazard, spreading throughout the whole area. And police department, we actually just using that chapter as a kind of a holding marker because the ordinances we did have regarding the police department have basically been superseded. We had, for example, a police committee made up partly of citizens, and an ordinance was passed to fold that back into the city council, and so that ordinance was basically canceled. So right now I don't have anything to populate that chapter 10, but presuming that we would have some things in the future, I still have it as a chapter, but there's nothing in it right now. So, and again, we'll continue this process. We're going to be soon getting into the complicated ones, in particular the zoning ordinance, which is probably as large as all of our other ordinances put together. And so that one, once we get past that one, it'll be easy street. So. And again, I welcome any comments, questions regarding any of these chapters. And also, we're doing this in the mode of a first reading for each chapter. So before we adopt the code as a whole, we'll have a opportunity for a second reading. And so once more, we can elicit any comments, changes. And one item that's come up, by the way, as you all know, the state has opened up the possibility of off-sale Sunday liquor. And that is something that we may need to look at in the near future. That doesn't activate until July 1st. But our present code of ordinances for our liquor licenses doesn't encompass that updated state law. And so it's something we will need to look at in the future.
In the near future.
Yes. The other reason for codifying the ordinances is to make it easier in the future to change them, which is our continuing option. Once it's in code form, it's much easier to say, well, let's change code chapter 6, section A3, as opposed to, well, we've got these 17 ordinances on the books already that have been somewhat partially amended and so on, and so where are we at exactly, and which ones do we need to, supersede or amend? Well, we've basically gone through that process by codifying them, and so future changes should be much easier.
Also much easier for the general public to access information online.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the council? Hearing none, we will accept this as part of the first reading of ordinance number 313. All right, move on to resolutions. Resolution 27-2017.
27-2017, reviewing plans and specifications and ordering advertisements for bids for Circle Drive. We do have our city engineer Jason from right here to go into further detail, or?
I can give a brief update. So we did finalize the plans and specifications and we're ready for bidding on that. And I just went through the latest and greatest cost estimate after we redid all the quantities for final design, and we're tracking very close to where we were at with the preliminary engineering report. So I think those numbers that were presented in the engineer's report were accurate from what I'm seeing still today. So if you approve the resolution, we'll get it out on the street, and I believe we have an opening of the 10th of May, I believe.
Yes, correct. Bid opening May 10th.
May 10th at 11 a.m. here, so.
Okay, any questions from the council for Mr. Femright? Or on the project in general? Hearing none, I would like to have someone introduce the resolution.
I'll introduce resolution 27-2017, approving plans and specifications and ordering advertisement for bids for Circle Drive.
I'll second that.
Okay, the resolution 27-2017 is introduced by Councilmember Cowell, second by Councilmember Hattlestead, and that resolution is approving the plans and specifications, ordering advertisement for bids for Circle Drive. Any more discussion? If not, we'll have roll call vote. Councilmember Batchor.
Yes.
Councilmember Yashewski.
Yes.
Councilmember Hattlestead.
Yes.
Councilmember Cowell.
Yes.
4 in favor. Resolution is adopted. Moving on to item B, resolution 28-2017.
The Planning and Zoning Committee met on April 6th to review 2 requests. Both of them are before you tonight. The first one is approving and denying a site plan for a batch processing facility, Semstone Products, at 1108 Circle Drive. Two memos were included in the council's packet for review. One was authored by Cynthia Smith-Strack, the planning and zoning consultant, as well as city engineer Jason Femright. So I'll just walk through some of the discussion, the memo, as well as the recommendations from the planning committee. So first of all, just as some background, Semstone proposes a development of a 3,360 square foot concrete batch plant with associated parking and drive areas on approximately 6.4 acres adjacent to Circle Drive. The plant is to be a slab-on-grade concrete panel construction with a display area, driver, office, restroom, storage, and concrete mix batch area, as well as a mezzanine storage area. And in addition to the batch plant, a weir structure to manage the processed water from truck washout operations is proposed. The weir system will separate water from solids. Overflow will drain into a sedimentation pond, which will also overflow into a northerly wet sedimentation pond in the event of an extreme rain event. Stormwater from the site will be directed into 2 wet sedimentation ponds, providing rate control and water quality treatment. One on the northeast corner of the site and the other on the southwest. An impervious surface coverage is proposed for 63% of the lot area. Employee and truck parking are illustrated on the site plan, which is on your desk with the larger drawings that you have. Lot surfacing post-project is to include concrete as well as compacted gravel and turf. There's no additional landscaping proposed at this time, and no exterior lighting or fencing is represented on the site plan. In terms of the comprehensive plan, this is a planned use of the subject property. It's consistent with the proposed industrial use. The subject site is adjacent to I-1 uses on the west and the northwest side, and ag uses in the east and south portion of that property. The lot size, building coverage, building height, and required setbacks all meet standards of the ordinance. A total of 8 employee and 2 customer parking spaces are illustrated on your site plan. There will also be 6 truck parking stalls, and all will be consistent of all compacted gravel. The outdoor storage is to be screened with suitable materials. And aggregate storage bins and a recycle pile are proposed along the southern border. A berm is also proposed, and at this time, property to the south and east is used for farming. The area is guided for potential future residential development in the south and the east. Signage is not being proposed at this time. However, when that time comes, a permit would be required. Any lighting, if lighting was to be placed on site, exterior lighting, that would be dealt with administratively. Our city engineer, Femright, he also provided a review of the site plan, and with the planning commission discussed how the city of Arlington will be constructing the 2017 Circle Drive and street improvements, which will provide a 10-ton bituminous roadway as well as 6-inch sanitary sewer and 8-inch water main extension. So again, the Planning and Zoning Committee met on April 6th. They specifically addressed the required height of a berm on the property adjacent to the southern property line, requiring a 3-foot berm, and a maximum height of the aggregate recycle pile of 15 feet. And following the discussion, the Planning and Zoning approved a resolution recommending the City Council to approve the site plan subject to 12 conditions, and I'll just go over a couple of those. One of those conditions is that the use is as described by the applicant. Must be compliant with standards contained in Ordinance 169 relating to noise, smoke, dust, fumes, or gases, sewer and water discharge, odor, and vibration. The lighting shall be directed away from the adjoining property if that does get constructed. Signage shall require a sign permit application. Compliance with recommendations contained in City Engineer Femright's review memo dated March 20th, as well as consulting planning consultant Cynthia Smith-Strack's memo dated April 6th. Issuance of a building permit is required. The approval of this site plan should expire 1 year after date of approval unless the applicant has commenced construction of the use on the property. Approval of the site plan does not approve any future expansion or associated improvements on site, and then any modifications not defined as minor by the zoning administrator shall require separate site plan removal or approval. There were representatives from Semstone at that meeting, and they commented on their stockpiles and the berm and such.
I believe they were in agreement with those.
Correct, they were.
Any comments, Engineer Femright, on the site? Your review, everything looked to be in order?
They responded to my comments in a written letter form, and everything is kosher from
Good.
everything that I reviewed.
Would someone wish to introduce a resolution to approve the site plan?
I'll make a motion to approve 2017, approving the site plan for batch processing facility, Semstone Products at 1108 Circle Drive, with the 12 conditions laid out by the Planning Commission.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, the resolution is introduced by Councilmember Batchor, second by Councilmember Yashewski, and the resolution is 28-2017, approving a site plan for the batch processing facility, Semstone Products, at 1108 Circle Drive. Is there additional discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote by roll call vote. Councilmember Hattlestead?
Yes.
Councilmember Cowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Yashewski?
Yes.
Councilmember Batchor?
Yes.
4 in favor, resolution is adopted. Move on to item C, resolution 29-2017.
You have resolution 29-2017 in front of you tonight, approving denying a conditional use permit and site plan to allow a diesel exhaust fluid blending facility at 39625 230th Street. We do have a representative here from Pilot Travel Centers, Todd Smoots, thank you. And it also is representing Warren Dressen, the property owner, at the address that I just gave you. Just a little bit of background, again, just reviewing planning and zoning consultant Cynthia Smith-Strack's her memo, as well as city engineer Jason Femright. And if you have any comments or anything you'd like to add, please do so. But Pilot Travel Centers LLC proposes a urea solution production operation at 39625 230th Street. Salute will be delivered by truck tanker or truck and mixed with water in a prefabricated, almost a 10,000 square foot prefabricated metal building at the site. The finished product will be shipped out by rail.
I believe that's the other way around, is it not? It will arrive by rail,
Rail.
be shipped out by truck.
Okay. The solution is non-flammable, non-toxic, and non-hazardous. Pilot Travel Centers LLC has entered a ground lease of the subject property, which is owned by Warren Dressen. Timeline for construction is May 2017, with operations on site commencing August 2017. City drinking water and sanitary sewer are proposed for extension to the site. Pilot estimates 5 employees will be on site, and Pilot estimates 3 trucks will be stopping at the facility each day. Operation is proposed for 24 hours, 365 days a year. The city previously approved a conditional use permit for transloading of liquid natural gases in January of 2015, and then renewed that same CUP in December of 2016. Section 9, Subdivision 3A of our zoning ordinance 169 provides for the manufacturing, production, processing, cleaning, storage, servicing, repair, and testing of materials, goods or products within the I-1 Limited Industrial District under a conditional use permit. The CUP and site plan applications were included in your packet for your review. The applicant does represent that the Pilot Travel Centers will blend a diesel exhaust fluid, or DEF, at the site. The process includes purifying city water through deionization and reverse osmosis, and then blending that purified water with a urea concentrate. A nearly 10,000 square foot slab on grade prefabricated metal building is proposed for the site. The building will be 25 feet in height with the 2 roll-up overhead doors on the north and the south side of the building, and 3 typical exterior entry doors, and no windows are proposed. The building will contain 2 15,000-gallon water storage tanks and 12 20,000 DEF storage tanks, water purification equipment, blending equipment, a restroom for workers, a rail car heater, and an offload room for truck drivers dropping off this DEF loads. Maximum of 5 truck transports may be anticipated per day. The business will require approximately 5 employees. Municipal water and sanitary sewer will serve the building. No outdoor storage will occur. Rail cars may be stored on the rail spur located on the subject site. Hours of operation are, as we mentioned, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. No storage of flammable, hazardous, or toxic materials shall occur on site. Employee and truck parking spaces are illustrated on your site plan, which again you have on your desk. Lot surfacing post-project is to include concrete, compacted gravel, and pervious surface. No additional landscaping is proposed, and no exterior lighting or fencing is allowed. This project, just like Semstone, does meet our comprehensive plan. The adjacent locale is adjacent to I-1 uses on the west and northwest side of the property, as well as ag uses. Just like the other application, this application meets all performance standards in terms of lot size, building coverage, and setbacks. Our Sibley County Public Works Director, Tim Becker, is recommending that the existing access on County Road 12 should be shifted to the east to better align with access to property north of the site. Parking meets standards. As mentioned, there is no outdoor storage and therefore meets the ordinance, city ordinance. If there were to be any signage, a permit would be required, and if there was any lighting, that too would be handled administratively. City engineer Femright did submit his memo, which is included in your packet, and he again discussed how the city of Arlington will be constructing the 2017 Circle Drive street and utility improvements, designing and constructing an 8-inch sanitary sewer and an 8-inch water main extension. Wetland delineation should be done for the limits of disturbance, and then a stormwater pollution prevention plan should be completed before any ground disturbance is started. So the Planning and Zoning Committee, at their meeting on April 6th, they did recommend or approve a resolution recommending the City Council approve the site plan, subject to 23 conditions. We can again just touch on some of those. One of the conditions being that the use is defined as within the application by the applicant. The conditional use permit that you have before you tonight would supersede and replace any other previous conditional use permit. The use shall at no time exceed an average of 5 tanker trucks at the site each day, otherwise an amendment to the CUP would be required. Recommendations included in this review memo, as well as City Engineer Jason Femwright's memo, need to be met. No outdoor storage is allowed. The property owner and lessee shall at times keep the property weed-free, control the dust on the property, as well as prevent soil erosion and prevent tracking of debris onto the public rights-of-way. Property owner and lessee shall ensure each and every day that any material and debris tracked from the site onto County Road 12 is swept off of the public right-of-way. All truck traffic maneuvers and parking, staging, or stacking shall occur on site on the private property. The use is subject to re-review and approval of the fire chief prior to establishment of the use. He reviewed the use and the materials used at this site, but then he would also review the building plans. The building permit for the proposed structure is required. Signage intended to be viewed from off the site shall require a separate permit. Exterior lighting, if proposed, shall require administrative review. Fencing, if proposed, requires an issuance of a permit. The use shall at times meet the requirements, must meet requirements of our zoning ordinance relating to noise, vibration, and smoke. This approval will expire 1 year after date of approval unless the applicant has commenced operation of the use on site. The permit is subject to all applicable codes, regulations, and ordinances. City may revoke the CUP upon violation of the conditional use permit. The CUP under this resolution will expire with no further action of the city if the use ceases for more than 12 consecutive months. The use permitted under this resolution may change to a permitted use in the I-1 district without further action by the city council. However, the use may not change to another conditional use. And then last but not least, any modification not defined as minor by the zoning administrator shall require separate site plan removal. I think that's covers it. If we have any other
That's a lot
questions,
of
I know we have a couple of experts out in the audience. So,
Any questions from the council?
Yeah, I'm curious, what's this product gonna be used for?
I think the easiest way to think about it is it's like orange juice concentrate. So we bring in the concentrate on the train, we bring it into the building and mix it with water, and then it's diluted and then sent out on trucks. And it's for mostly it's for commercial trucking. Most new model trucks have a diesel exhaust fluid tank on them, and it helps control emissions. It knocks about 90% of the particulate out of the air. It's injected like after the combustion chamber and combines with the exhaust to limit emissions there. So mostly it's for our travel centers within about 250 miles of here. We do sell it to other people too because there's not a lot of folks that make it.
Oh, so the pilot gas stations we see off the highways is one of your stations?
Yeah, we be making it for ourselves. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You planning any upgrades in the rail spur? Is that gonna be necessary, or rebuilding of the rail spur, or don't you know yet?
I think it's sufficient the way it is. We just have maybe 3 tanker cars at most on it, and I went down and walked it with Warren Dress, and it looked okay.
Were you okay with the planning commission's recommendations?
Yeah, I'm okay with the conditions for the conditional use permit.
Any other questions? If not, I would entertain someone introducing the resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve 29-2017, a conditional use permit and site plan to allow a diesel exhaust fuel blending facility at 3962-5 230th Street.
I'll second that.
Resolution was introduced by Councilmember Batchor, second by Councilmember Hattlestead. Is there any further discussion? Okay. This is Resolution 29-2017, approving a conditional use permit site plan to allow diesel exhaust fluid blending facility at 39625 230th Street. Any further discussion? If not, we'll vote by roll call vote. Councilmember Yashewski.
Yes.
Councilmember Cowell.
Yes.
Councilmember Hattlestead.
Yes.
And Councilmember Batchor.
Yes.
4 in favor, the resolution is adopted. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Thank you.
Thank you,
council
Mr.
members.
Schultz.
Okay, next is resolution 30-2017.
So before you tonight is a copy of the letter that it was drafted to be sent to MnDOT. This has received the verbal support from the Arlington Chamber, Sibley County Public Works, as well as Interim Chief Tony Padilla. In addition to the letter, MnDOT has asked the council to also adopt a resolution to not only accept the city's letter of request to decrease the speed limit and authorize a speed study of Highway 5. This is I guess as part of this, I just wanted the council to be aware that this was a draft resolution that came before the city, and as part of the language of that resolution, does say that the council would support the study's recommendations, which could possibly include an increase to the speed limit or modification of the existing limits of the speed zones. And we are talking specifically about the speed zone between 2nd Street at the Senex gas station out to the easterly curve on the east side of County Road 17, and that is due to the increased observation of pedestrian traffic, not only for retail but the schooling. And so you have the support of these three parties, but I just wanted the council to be aware of the resolution that has been presented to you.
I feel very uncomfortable. I don't feel uncomfortable with sending the letter, but I feel very uncomfortable with the wording or the way they're saying is that if we come back and tell you that the speed limit should be increased, you have to agree to that, and you have to like it, and you have to approve it. That's, in other words, sort of a one-way street. If we don't want to take the chance on having the speed limit increased, then we don't make the plea to decrease it. Because if they in fact find that traffic doesn't warrant a decrease, and may even warrant an increase, we have to agree to that. We have to approve it. That's,
So would they only study from Senex out, or would they,
That is the request of the
Yeah.
so
council.
they're only doing the 60-mile-an-hour part, correct?
part of it is 45.
Okay, no,
Yeah.
so it does get into that part,
It gets into that part.
so that, they wouldn't increase that.
I'm pretty confident that if they did a study, they would not increase the 45-mile-an-hour portion of that road, because there is a lot of traffic, a lot of foot traffic, and a lot of traffic, period, as far as cars crossing and stuff.
And since Dollar General's been added to that location, it has increased the foot traffic. And I can't imagine cars going faster there in an really uncontrolled intersection.
Sort of interesting, if you're heading east on the highway and look, let's see, it would be probably right about straight south of Golden Hearts. There's a sign that says 30. No, there's a sign, I'm sorry,
It's 45 there.
45. But on the
45.
other side of that same sign, same post, it says 60. So how can one apply and not the, it just doesn't seem right.
Depends
to
on
me.
the direction you're traveling.
Well, yeah, all right.
We have requested speed zone change, I'd say maybe once every 5 or 6 years, ever since I've been city attorney, and they keep turning us down. One of the more recent responses I found ridiculous was, at that time, I think they did a speed study, and they said, well, the average flow of traffic is going 45, so that must be the right speed for that 45 zone. It's almost like a catch-22.
Mhm.
And they also said, well, it's not, how do they phrase it? It's not obviously urban in character. In other words, somebody driving into town or driving out of town in that 45 zone, that it doesn't seem like you're in the city. And I thought, that's not correct at all. You know, it's fully built up on both sides of the road. And so, for some reason, the district out of Mankato does not want to change that zone. And I never have understood why. Well, one philosophical response I got when I talked to an engineer down there once was, well, there's always this struggle between, you know, community desires, or I would say community safety, and the rights of the general public to, you know, drive as quickly as possible down the highways.
Probably, hopefully, the change now is that we do have, it's a little more retail down in that area, and that's something 5 years ago wasn't the case, so it's just another factor for them to consider, but.
Well, we have that controlled crosswalk now, you know, leading to the community center. One of the arguments I had made was that, in one of our earlier requests, was that, you know, the school has events at the community center, so we have large groups of children, you know, crossing the highway there, and it creates a you know, real safety hazard, but doesn't seem to make any impression on them.
And then Sibley County will be replacing the bridge on County Road 17 in 2021, and that will accommodate wider pedestrian lanes on either side of that bridge. So again, it's gonna promote more pedestrian traffic along that stretch.
Well, and after they raised the speed limit to 60 there now, I think it's just, 55 is one thing, but 60 is another. Even though we run the risk of it staying the same or potentially going higher, I think we have to go for it and fight for it.
Well, and another argument that can be made is that when we transition from the 30 to the 45 zone or vice versa, people are always, you know, cheating on the zones. And it's just human nature, I do it myself. I try not to, but, and so I would say historically, half of the speeding tickets issued in Arlington are on that stretch of road. Because people coming in from the north, they're still going 40 or 42 as they're rounding the curve by the hospital park, which is, you know, well within the 30-mile-an-hour zone. Or vice versa, as they're coming around that curve, you know, by the city hospital park, they know there's a 45 zone coming up, so they start speeding up for it. And they're already, you know, at 40 or 45 well before they actually get into that zone. So that's creating a further safety hazard. You know, because that area, the hospital park area, that's you know, definitely residential. You can tell it's been a pet peeve of mine for a long time.
I'd like to introduce,
Okay,
I said, all we could do is
all we can do
try.
is try it, at least we,
They say no, they say no.
I'd like to introduce Resolution 30, 2017, requesting MnDOT to accept the city's letter of request to decrease the speed limit and authorize a speed study of Highway 5.
Second.
Second.
okay. Okay, resolution 30-2017 has been introduced by Councilmember Batcher, second by Councilmember Hattlestead, and that is requesting MnDOT to accept a letter of request and also to authorize a speed study on Highway 5. Is there any further discussion? Vote by roll call vote. Councilmember Yashewski.
Yes.
Councilmember Batcher.
Yes,
Councilmember Cowell.
Yes.
Councilmember Hattlestead.
Yes.
4 in favor, the resolution is adopted. Resolution 31-2017.
In your packet is a copy of a donation letter and check from the German Days Inc. toward the second annual Arlington Night Out event, and that amount is for $300.
And that event is August, right? Okay.
I'd like to introduce Resolution 31, 2017, accepting a donation and designating its use from German Days.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion, or introduction of the resolution by Councilmember Batcher, second by Councilmember Yashewski, and that is Resolution 31-2017, accepting a $300 donation from German Days Inc. to be designated for the second annual Arlington Night Out event. Any discussion? If not, Councilmember Cowell.
Yes.
Councilmember Batchor.
Yes.
Councilmember Hattlestead.
Yes.
Councilmember Yashewski.
Yes.
4 in favor, resolution is adopted. There is no unfinished business, we'll move on to new business and open up discussion regarding the alleyway improvement between Third and Fourth Avenue. This will be running behind the United Methodist Church. Information was provided at a workshop that was held here at 5:30, and we are opening up now for further discussion and for the council to take a position on this topic.
Well, if I may, just to insert my legal opinion, the council, of course, has the ability to change policies as it wishes. My interpretation of the policy that we have in place right now would not allow this to be considered a reconstruction. If I understand correctly, what's being proposed is that a gravel alley surface be converted over to bituminous surface. That's not a reconstruction, that's new construction. And the way our policy currently reads, new construction is 100% assessed to the property owners. So I don't think the council could go in the direction of the requested relief from the church to reduce their share down to 25% without amending the policy. Now, how could the policy be amended? Well, having heard their presentation, what occurs to me is that, and again, this kind of segues back to a discussion earlier about, in our workshop, about what the nature of assessments are, the idea that they improve the property and property values, and therefore the adjoining homeowners should bear part of the cost of that. Well, based on the presentation from the church, the council could, I think, consider an amendment to its policy, something to the effect of saying that as a special exception to our general policy, any right-of-way considered to primarily benefit the general public and not the property owners could be assessed on a different basis. And in this case, I guess the argument would be that if in fact the alleyway is primarily used by school participants, that then it's more like a public thoroughfare and not so much a local use alley. For further consideration, I think our policy currently reads that a new construction alley would be assessed 100% to property owners. I think that's based on the general idea that in most cases, alleys are primarily or almost completely for the benefit of the adjoining property owners. Typical situation, we've had some, petitions in recent years where our unimproved alley, the grass strip alley, maybe there's a homeowner on that block that decides, gee, I'd like to have a paved alley back here. Maybe they want to put up a new garage or a storage shed or something, and they want to access the alley with a, bituminous surface right away. In situations like that, the council, of course, has polled the homeowners, and recently the majority in those cases have said, no, we don't want the improvement. Okay, but the basic idea of the 100% assessment would be if, let's say, we decided that yes, this grass strip minimum maintenance alleyway should now be a bituminous alleyway. Well, who does that serve? Primarily, in those typical cases, it would be the homeowners who all now want to put new garages on that alley. And so who's going to be using the alley? The homeowners. So who should pay for the alley? The homeowners. And in most of these cases, that alley, even if it's paved, is not going to be, let's say, a favorite cruising spot for people, moving around the city, getting from point A to point B. They're just not going to turn down an alley. They're going to stay on the city streets. But this might, again, the council might feel this is a unique situation, and if so, could carve out a unique exception in the ordinance going forward to say if it's found that the primary use of an alleyway is the general public, that perhaps, that should not be subject to the same assessment level as most alleyways. So,
No, it's interesting because I think ultimately we want the alley done. I mean, I'd ride bike with my kids on that sidewalk now. The sidewalk's horrible, but I mean, you can't imagine having a brand new sidewalk and then coming up to the alley that's, got potholes and all full of water. Whether it's people walking to school or riding bikes or anything, I think ultimately we need to do it.
I worked at school for 34 years, and that was a very popular location for parking, for parents to pick up kids. I know that cars used to park in the grass lot, and they had to put in big boulders to deter that. It is more than just church parking, and the rest of the property owners will benefit a little bit, but not like the public will.
And I think this alley is different than most any other alley in town, like I kind of mentioned. I don't foresee us in the future doing a lot of paved alleys, outside of.
In a residential area.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, I think the last three situations I remember where someone requested a paved alley were turned down after the residents in the block were polled, and the majority or all of the others, as I recall in the last case, there was one owner who wanted it paved and the other 9 said no, and so the city didn't do it.
I'm not sure with, the entrance to the school being on the north side is gonna affect that flow at all. I mean, as far as traffic, I still feel like anything around the school, a block away, any kind of parking that they're gonna find all the way around, they're gonna utilize
Yeah.
during events.
I
I
agree.
mean, it's just gonna end up being that way. So even if the traffic might be a little less, it'll still be there, and it'll still be public traffic.
Right, and there will be more sporting events because Gaylord will not be used basically for that anymore at all.
No, it won't be.
And then if we do change our policy, we can set pretty much whatever we want, right?
Well, I think can still be left a little vague, but I think the way to approach it would be a statement, something to the effect that the council can, in its discretion, recognize a unique situation where an alleyway is a primary benefit to the general public
There you go.
and not to the homeowners.
Mhm.
And so we could still, if we use that kind of wording, I think this council can still consider it a pretty steep threshold to get over. So we don't have everybody else in town saying, okay, now pave our alley, and by the way,
Yeah.
we don't think we should pay for it.
I think anyone that frequents the school, either by foot or by vehicle, realizes the use of that alley and has either used it themselves or know that it is a very common way to get from, one avenue to another, for kids, for adults.
Plus, the water does pool, on the street
Yeah,
and for parking, and so that also is a detriment to the general public.
if we as a council would arrive at a percentage this evening, so that the parties that are involved in this would have some direction, could we then, just direct the city administrator to make that change in the policy? Or do we have to make the change in the policy first, the amendment in the policy first, and then make a decision?
Well, one problem is it wasn't on the agenda for action tonight, so I
Okay.
don't think we can actually vote on it. But the council could, express a general consensus. I think we've done that before, a consensus, and
That we move on at a future meeting?
yes, where it's on the agenda for action. And, and I think, in answer to your question, I think it would have to be a policy change first,
Okay,
and then,
could both be done the same evening or same meeting?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So I think if the council feels like that's the way you wanna go, is to make a change in the policy, what we need to arrive at is a consensus of what percentage are we gonna be dealing with here, or in the wording, we can take care of at a future meeting, at the next meeting.
What is what is the normal street assessed at? Like,
Street
just a
or
street,
alley?
just a street.
The alleys are assessed at 25% if it's just redoing it or, not upgrading it,
Right, okay.
or resurfacing or
I believe it's 25%.
For the streets too?
I was gonna add the policy up there, I just don't wanna misspoke here on the record, but
for
I
streets
believe
instead of,
it's 25 and 50 for curb, but again, I wanna look at the.
Okay, your
That's
sheet
right.
says 25.
25 and
25.
50 for reconstructed curb and gutter.
I mean, cause if we're considering it a use, like a general public use, it's almost considered like a street.
The only thing it
Which
wouldn't
is the
have
same
to-
as the alley anyway, I mean, 25%.
There'd be some logic to that,
Mhm.
not necessarily curb and gutter, but the
Right.
street.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all, you wouldn't have curb and gutter.
Nope.
And just for the record, the amount that we're considering here is the 25,761.
Is it, but does it
Something like
include the other two properties as well?
Right.
So $8,500
So
more?
total project value would be 34,348.47. The church's portion is 25,761.31.
Okay, that would be 9/12, because the church owns
9 out of the 12 lots.
9 out of the 12 lots.
Yeah, but it would apply to all those property owners, not just the church.
Right.
Right.
Oh, yeah, the whole, whatever, what'd you say it was 30?
34,348.
And the city would be responsible
So
for
80
75% of that.
Yeah, $8,500 is 25%. So we'd have a bill of 25.5 and the split between the 12 property owners would be 8,500.
And this doesn't really affect any of the other parts of this project, right? I mean,
No, it's a
Jason, it would
standalone.
not, it was stand,
no,
okay.
okay.
Is that the consensus of the board? To
It's
treat it that way?
It's
I think-
fine.
As a
Yes.
street.
Or, well, the street or alley, it's 25%.
25%?
Yeah.
Mr. Hattlestead? Mr. Cowell?
Yeah, it's,
All
it's,
right. So, doesn't have to be unanimous, I just said consensus, so you can think on it a while.
Yeah.
Okay, it appears it is a consensus of the council to proceed that way with the 25%, 75% split. And we'll officially take that action at the next city council meeting on the 24th.
Mhm.
24th.
Just so there's an understanding, the church still has a right to opt out of the alley project.
Right.
And as Pastor Stemme indicated, they have to sell the congregation on spending anything on this alley. But I think we could still, put that provision in the policy. Even if it's not used for this project, it might come up again somehow in the future.
Then we won't have to.
I think you have a meeting tomorrow, you said, right?
School board does.
Wednesday night? So you'd probably know by
Yes.
the next meeting.
School
Our
board,
next meeting.
school board is tomorrow.
Okay.
That's the one that's tomorrow night. Any questions, Pastor Stemme? On the consensus that the council has arrived at?
Thank you, but, I guess I should make. The way our church discipline will require that this happens is that it'll take a recommendation from our council or from our board of trustees that we go ahead and do this, and then that will need to be affirmed later, okay? Just because it has to be, but my experience has been that once you have one of those groups make that decision that they want to affirm that, the chances that it's not going to get affirmed are pretty nil. But there always would be that possibility. So just so you're clear about that. And the sale of the property that I talked about earlier with the school district, if they make that offer, then that is also something that we actually need to call a special church conference of our church in order to actually approve that sale. So that wouldn't necessarily take place real quickly. We need to give at least 10 days and 2 Sundays notice of that. And so that action couldn't take place until sometime around the middle of May, given the current, I know people are gonna be out of town and all that kind of stuff. Just so that you kind of know that, but we would know. Then the other comment to make is so we've talked about, and I've talked to the city engineer about this over here, this supposed to turn on when you wanna walk across the street over here. Yes. I have discovered in walking my dogs that what it does is it will turn on if I'm walking from from here, the community center, to cross the street to go to the motel. But it does not turn on from the motel side to come across the street. It works one side but not the other right now. And I don't know why.
And
But-
somebody was out and checked it,
Yeah,
so
we had, the subcontractor was out there and did some adjusting, and they said it was fixed.
I wonder if he checked it both ways.
So, I'll correspond with them.
Corresponding, because it does work one direction, but it does
Said
not
they
work.
had to reset something.
It still does not work the other direction.
Okay, appreciate the,
Thank you.
I'll let them know.
Tell the contractors, people lined up there wanting to cross the highway and they never get to go ahead. Okay, thank you. All right. Any questions on that now? We have arrived at a consensus and we'll take that up at the next meeting. Moving on to item number 11, Police Department update. Interim Chief Padilla, welcome.
You. It's a sit down table finally. Mayor, council members, guests, I'm Tony Padilla, your interim police chief. And I apologize, I didn't know you guys had the high-speed system you got. I would have thrown this all into a PowerPoint, but we don't have that in Gaylord, so I didn't prepare one for you guys. Next month I'll have one for you though, I promise. I just kind of want to talk about things that the Gaylord Police have been kind of working on over here, in case you haven't heard, and then kind of go over some numbers from last month, and then kind of talk about where we are right now. For me personally, I've been kind of looking at your policy that you guys have in place right now, and getting that updated to bring it before the council to approve at a consent agenda. It's a little outdated and it needs some help. So working on that. We're working on reporting to the BCA and post. We have some mandatory monthly counseling or monthly reporting that I'm working on, making sure we're in compliance with. And then the final thing that I'm working on is kind of the community relations aspect. I've been kind of walking around the neighborhood, stopping in at businesses and making sure everything's okay and seeing if they have any concerns or issues. So for the most part, I stopped in one place that had a lot to say, but other than that, it's been going pretty well. Our officers have been concentrating. We were kind of given some things that were the city felt were hot topics that the officers have been dealing with. The park checks, we're making sure we're going through there. We haven't had any issues there yet. The hospital, they go through the hospital at night at shift change, and we've implemented some of the things that we do over in Gaylord, which are a big thing for us, our apartment walkthroughs, just to make sure there's no issues. So we're doing some of that, and then the quick shop wanted a presence at night when they close up the business. So those are some of the things that the officers are focusing on. I just wanted to point out one thing. I kind of heard a comment about traffic stops and you know, Gaylord stopping a lot of cars. Just so you know, since we've been here, they've only conducted 17 traffic stops, and of that, only 3 citations were written. So depends on certain things. If you have a requirement to have a certain machine in your car and you don't, it's kind of hard not to cite for some of these things. So the officers are giving out a lot of warnings, but they are stopping cars again. I know you guys expressed concern for that speed limit and enforcement, and so I'll make sure that my guys are aware of that now as well. So over the last couple of weeks, or actually since the 29th is when we started coming over here, there's been 132 calls for service, and I guess the way I can break that down is 115 of them were self-initiated, and those were apartment checks, bar checks, there was a barking dog, council meetings, civil matters. A lot of times people call in custody issues, and it's not really a criminal issue, but we get into those. Driving complaints, juvenile troubles, medicals, and then the big one out of all of this list is 44 park checks. So we're going to the 3 that we're going to, the Sportsman, Frenzel Park, and then Four Seasons. Four Seasons apparently is the one that has had some damage recently, and so we've been going to those. And a lot of times the reason we put these in our system is there'll be people that say, well, you know, I never see the police. They never come through, and they never check the Sportsman's Park. And so now there's a system of record that, yeah, we do. We go there pretty much daily at different times, and so there is a record there now that we're going there and checking these things out. So that's kind of what we've been working on here, and out of that, it's close to about 100 hours is the log time that we have, and that's between the officers and myself over the last since the 29th when we started coming over here. So I have a breakdown of that as well, and I'll make sure that you guys get it. Vicky will be in charge of making sure that we send her our logs every day, and then I'll just be here updating this Excel spreadsheet. So if there's ever a time that you want to see it, you could probably just ask her, and she could email it over to you in case you're wondering. So the month of March, there was 115 recorded ICRs, and again, the majority of this one was traffic stops, followed by school patrols and business checks. So right now we've kind of taken the philosophy that when Jordan is in town, we have him on a night rotation again, right back to where he was before all this took place. And so when Jordan is working, our officers don't come over. If there's an issue that he needs help with, they'll come over, but they're not coming over here and patrolling when Jordan's here. And then during the day, we've pretty much got it now where we have 2 officers on during the day. And so if something happens in Arlington, we'll take that call during the day. And then if that means that the county doesn't usually come over here during the day, but right now the county is coming over at night as well. So what I've instructed my officers to do is if they're working night shift and they're going to come over to Arlington, they let the deputies know, hey, I'm going to Arlington, so we don't have 3 squad cars sitting here. We just want to have one at a time. Kind of the coordination that we have with the county right now is if there's a call and Gaylord is in town, we take the call, and then if we're not in town, then the county responds. But just beware, there's no deputies working Saturday morning or Sunday morning. So for example, this weekend, we had somebody that, one of our officers came over to handle a call on a Saturday. It was an open door, which is like an alarm type call, and so instead of calling out a deputy, we took that. So that's our intent. If we have somebody on, we'll make sure we come over here versus trying to wait for a deputy to get called out. So other than that, I'm subject to any questions that you guys may have at this time of me. Nothing?
Pretty thorough.
I've asked around and, people for good comments, bad comments, whatever, and the ones I've talked to said they don't hear a thing, so it must be good.
Perfect. All right.
That's what we want. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the report. Item number 12, council committee updates. Utilities committee.
Well, we met with, I guess the main thing was the fair board, kind of about the I&I and some other issues that, making sure everything's metered. I think at the end, we came with a consensus for temporary metering for now. But I know Lee's gonna meet with a fair board member out there, go over all the grounds and, kind of go from there. Hopefully, I think that's a temporary solution.
Yeah.
At least we can see where their concerns are and our concerns are, and we're billing them at an agreement from, who knows how long ago. So I mean, something has to get resolved for both parties. And then also, Ross talked to him about camping out there, but it didn't seem to be much of an issue. Oh, and also they're gonna, I know Lee mentioned smoke testing around town, they're gonna do some of that out there as well, in the near future.
Okay, thank you. Police committee.
Tom?
We met in Gaylord, she mentioned, I think, last week, and pretty much talked about how we're going to look at the joint powers agreement, and kind of set up 1 or 2 items per week and go from there, instead of having kind of willy-nilly what's going on. I don't know, what did we end up with? Maybe Eliza can refresh my memory. We talked about putting some money in the kitty between Gaylord and Arlington, so that if we need some funds from now till whenever, did we decide we were going to ask the city for matching funds with Gaylord to put in a separate account?
I believe they put in $2,500.
$2,500.
And they would.
So
like
if we
Arlington.
have bills that arise through this, there was one speaker that was going to come out from, I think, was it
Centennial Lakes.
Centennial
Centennial
Lakes.
Lakes, to talk about a joint powers agreement, and there's a cost to that we could pay that out of that, and so it was kind of proposed that each community do that.
Probably can take care of that at next council meeting. Okay, anything else on police? If not, move on to streets committee.
I think the last meeting we had was pretty much in regards to the street project this year and the issues with the Methodist Church.
Pretty much a recap
And
of
that
what
pretty
we-
much sums that whole meeting up.
Yeah. Okay, EDA?
We met at the former TSE building and did a little tour. First time I was in there, the place is huge, but really divided up. So, it's quite interesting, but, it'll be open, what, in a week or two for
spring into
spring
Arlington?
into Arlington, so.
Mhm.
It's an interesting building nonetheless. We talked a little bit about succession planning, visits and outreach. Talked about rental rehabilitation program, doing a policy on that. We also talked a little bit about our goals. We always have those on each of our meetings, and we're working through some of our goals. We got a couple done, so, well, continuing on, so hitting them anyhow. So that was good.
Okay. And while you have the podium, planning and zoning?
I was not at
You were not?
planning and
I was
zoning,
not
but it
either.
looks like that everything that was on the agenda, we just took care of tonight. So, I was at the police committee meeting, so that same night.
Okay.
That got changed, the time of the police commission, so.
All right, moving on to open discussion, Johnson Controls update.
I was hoping to email out a copy of the letter I'm sending, but didn't quite get to it by the end of the day. I was somewhat focused on our workshop issues, but I had earlier contacted the regional, well, attempted to contact the regional director and also the attorney at corporate headquarters. I guess for two reasons. First of all, I wanted to find out what decision maker I could send the letter to. But secondly, to give those guys a last chance to, get something done before I went over their heads. And guess what? No response. So I've got a letter composed to George Oliver, who is the president of Johnson Controls International at his Milwaukee office. And I'm gonna send him actually a package including a lot of the background material.
Okay.
And say, sorry to report, but your underlings have totally blown us off here for several months, and we're just about to take legal action unless we receive a satisfactory response on our new light system. So
Okay, and you do have dollar amounts and light
Yeah.
information on that? Okay,
city administrator supplied that to me.
okay, great.
So,
Okay, so that is, and you, I would imagine, be sending that out soon? Okay,
yes.
all right. Okay, anything else under open discussion? I know Kirby has talked to me a few times about the dump site and the leaves, that we gotta do something, and I don't know if has he visited with you about that? In other words, we gotta get rid of what we got there before we start dumping some more on in fall.
So he was asked what to do.
What to do? We need to find somebody to haul leaves, I think, is what we do, to farm field or wherever, but the composting just isn't working. They can't stir it up enough to, it's gotten away from, and of course, Tony was reminded of this about a year ago already, that we need to do something proactive to get that going, and all of a sudden now, more leaves have been dumped on there, so it's,
And more probably coming
It's-
in the short future.
yeah, it's out of hand, I mean, it really is.
Has the city had to hire someone in the past? To
What did we do
remove
with
this?
leaves in the past, Ross? You're a longtime city resident.
Fire?
Did we burn them?
The leaves.
Going way back, yes.
But that's sort of a no-no
I
now.
suppose we could have an accidental fire out there.
Yeah.
It
Not
would be
anymore, it's
stopped pretty
recorded
quick.
now.
Is Liza in charge of the
It would be
accidental fires?
stopped pretty quick.
Take care of that tonight.
Yes. I'm not absolutely positive about this, but I think that there might have been some hauling out to farm fields at one point. It wasn't a systematic thing, but I think there was one year where somebody out in the country said, yes, I'll take that as
Okay,
compost
sure,
or fill.
oh, yeah.
But I don't know if I have anything in my files about it, and I don't really recall who it was, but, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think, yeah, hauling is probably our option. It's finding somebody that will take them.
Well, because he said that the dirt or it's broke down too much or whatever, it's not viable anymore.
Yeah.
That's underneath.
And I
So-
thought he had also mentioned a quote was acquired from Gaylord Sanitation, and it was gonna be thousands of dollars to remove
Yeah.
it.
I don't know how they would haul it.
No,
Dumpsters?
I have no idea, you get all in
I
a
don't-
roll up.
Yeah, they wouldn't haul it in a roll. I mean, you
No.
need to spread it, you know?
Yeah.
You need
Fire.
fire. Yeah.
But is it just these or is it it's,
Well, it's whatever
Broken
is there.
down
Some
and-
are decayed, some are fresh from last fall. Some are dry, some are wet. It's glorified manure is what it is. And
well, and then what about the stick pile that's out there too?
that is supposed to be ground. There's
That's supposed
It's
to
supposed to
be
be
a
hauled away. There's
company.
a contractor that offered to take it, but it had to reach a certain size. So I know that Kirby had also reached out to them and they were gonna put us on the schedule.
Yeah. So I think that we may have a remedy for, but not the compost pile. So look for somebody that wants, I mean, if you can talk to people you know and find somebody that will take them and then another person that'll haul them. So,
I mean, we could try and put something in the newspaper,
Yeah.
Facebook, I don't know. Sibley Shopper, that would get out to more people, but I don't know the
yeah,
audience would be,
you wanna get to the farm folks,
right.
you'd have to get to the farm folks with it.
Yeah,
Somebody
they're
who
ready
likes,
to start planting.
yeah,
That's the next problem.
right. I mean, we may have a window of 4 or 5 days here to do it,
But that's about it.
and then they'll be in
As
the
soon as
field.
it dries
planting.
up, they're gonna be pretty close to in the field.
And that'll be it then until early
Now
fall
it's
again,
October,
until
November.
soybeans are off. So, okay, well, just so everyone's aware that it is a issue that needs to be dealt with.
A big win.
All right, anything else? If not, is a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Motion by Councilmember Hattlestead, second by Councilmember Yashewski to adjourn the meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried.